Welcome to Conversations Under Insulation. This is about CUI and topics around asset integrity. My name is Prafull Sharma, and I'm happy to welcome Frode Wiggen from DNV from his CUI expertise. Hi, Frode.
Hello, Prafull. Glad to be here with you.
Thank you, Frode. Our audience would like to know a lot about experts like yourself, CUI, and you have been doing a lot of work on CUI and guidelines, made new guidelines. We would like to learn from you in the next few minutes. So, Frode, how do you see this CUI as an issue? What is the real issue when you hear the word CUI?
It's complicated. The challenge related to CUI consists of several elements. As we have written into the new recommended practice, we have divided the challenge into 4 elements related to material versus temperature, related to coating, related to water wetting, and related to design. And through the conversation, I'm sure we'll elaborate on each of them.
Do you see CUI as a more of a coatings issue, or is it an insulation issue, or even an NDT inspection issue? How do you see it?
Well, both coating and insulation have a significant impact. When it comes to NDT, I'm not that sure because as of today, there's not a really good NDT method in place to detect the CUI. There might be different opinions on that. But if you refer to the HOIS report, which is public available, you will find out that there isn't any real good NDT method to detect CUI yet.
So, what is the practice in the industry in that case? How do you inspect?
There's a wide range of different practices. Some companies, do not inspect as such. They do refurbishment in several campaigns, quite costly, but often the most efficient way of doing it. Others do inspection by removing partial removal of insulation and do visual inspection of that. Other companies do inspection by using radiographic inspection or pulsed eddy current inspection or other terms of inspection without removing the insulation. And to me, that's might give some false security or in that you don't have any flaws. Okay. But of course, if you use an NDT method that's not able to detect the flaws, that's a risky business.
Right, right. So there's no foolproof answer to inspection. There are many techniques, including most prevalent one, as you said, is visual. Remove the insulation and then do a visual check. But is it even despite that, is it solved problem? Like CUI is a solved problem because of that? Are there no accidents at all, or do you still hear about issues of CUI being leading to some shutdowns and some issues?
Of course, there are regular incidents with CUI, and there is huge investments to tackle or the challenge, but there are also a lot of incidents happening. Statistics from Norway and from the UK tells that 50% of the hydrocarbon leaks within the oil and gas business is due to CUI. That's 50% of the reported leaks. So yes, of course, there are incidents.
So that means CUI is statistically among the top asset integrity issues, Norway and in the UK. But do you see that globally as well? Do you hear about it?
My information is primarily based on Europe, but there are old studies that indicates kind of that you have high numbers in investments and high numbers in incidents as well. So I have no reason to believe that this is just a European challenge. This is a global challenge.
Okay, so there's a global challenge. There are methods, but there's not a foolproof solution available as yet. Now we keep hearing about RBI for asset integrity. Obviously, it's been more prevalent, more industries are adopting it, risk-based inspection. Now, in your experience for CUI, how much is RBI is effective?
Let's call it risk-based approach, because by risk-based inspection, you say that the inspection is the mitigation we need. It's the smart approach. It's the best approach to use a risk-based approach, identifying the most probable places for CUI. It's not necessarily simplistic, but based on when you have, say, 1,000 tags or 10,000 tags, and you need to identify the worst ones, you need to have a risk-based approach.
Right.
There are different methodologies available, quantitative, qualitative, and semi-Q methods. So yeah.
So there are many methods available, and I like your analogy that it's a smart approach. You can say it's a risk-based approach. It's a philosophy, right? It's more of a smart approach. And then there can be many ways of doing it: quantitative, semi-quantitative, qualitative, all that. But do you see it's proven to be effective in CUI case applications?
Yes. But it has to be done thoroughly, and actually the challenge might be in getting the right data. There is incidents. When you look at things that is happening, you can see that, oh, this should have been found or identified earlier. You might see, okay, we had a temperature that was the wrong temperature area. You had a coating that you should expect had degraded, and all these parameters you could have foreseen if you had used a proper approach to identify the risk. But then again, you need to have a dynamic approach. You need to have the right information.
So that means what you're saying is it is effective and it is a good approach, but it depends on what kind of inputs you give. So if the input is not right, then the output is not going to be right. And that's what I gather. So the effectiveness depends on the seriousness and the right kind of inputs.
Yeah, and it also depends on the type of analysis and the approach, of course. There are different approaches. You can find a recipe in API 581. You might find approaches and qualitative approaches in EFC 55 and in API 583, as well as in DNV RPG 109. They are all different, and will give you the answer in different terms.
Exactly. So as you said, some of them are quantitative, right? And some of them are qualitative. So the list goes on. API 581, as you said, 583. Then you have obviously EFC and DNV RP109. Overall, I see there's a evolution of RBI analysis methods. Risk analysis, risk models. There's an evolution. But what do you see in general? What is the gaps in the conventional RBI, across all this? And obviously, you're trying to tackle it through new methods.
I think to me, it's not yet a very good method to actually update an RBI analysis, or at least the industry isn't as good as it should be to have a more dynamic approach. In the European guideline for the risk-based inspection framework, I think it is, it says that it's a requirement that you have an evergreening process. Evergreening is, in this context, means that you shall update your analysis based on your findings or your new temperature range CUI if the insulation is wet or dry, and so on and so forth. So I think if you're talking RBI, I think the gap is for the evergreening process. to have a
Okay.
dynamic approach.
Okay, so once the RBI is done, but then updating it and evergreening it, keeping up with it is a challenge. Why? Why it is a challenge? Is it organizational? Is it people? Or is it technical?
If you go into how this process work for a company, most companies, you hire some consultants to do an RBI analysis. They do that, deliver a product, and then an inspection or an operator has an inspection program based on that. And then they know that, okay, we'll set aside money to update data in 5 years' time. But there's a lot of things that can happen during those 5 years' time. So that goes on the organization and how work is distributed.
And then after 5 years, what happens? Do they update it or they contact the agency again?
Often then again, there's someone coming in, not necessarily the same consultancy either, and gets captures some information, inspection results, maybe some changes in the temperature range, and do an update of that. To me, such update should be done every year at least, so you can have a dynamic approach to this. Maybe you can extend the frequency of the inspections, or you might have more inspection, more or less based on what you find. So it's always possible to compare the map and the road, so to speak.
Okay. So evergreening is a wish, and it is a good approach, but it's a challenge to do it right. And what you're saying is people are doing it every 5 years maybe, but it needs to be kind of it needs to be in the DNA. It needs to be continuously be done every year, maintained. Then the full benefits of RBI can be obtained.
I think that will improve the results and make a more efficient inspection regime.
So again, coming back to the gaps in the current process for RBI, do you see a trend of improving the risk models, which may result in better risks other than the practice of evergreening, or is it already reached its maturity?
I think if we look some years back in time, it was more had a tendency to have a more of a quantitative approach. If you ask me, no, I think it's more a matter of what is the detail we actually need in the user's end. If you ask me, those 5-10 years ago, I would say that the quantitative approach will always be the best. Now I'm a little bit more reluctant to be that absolute in that statement. I think we have to find out what is needed actually to make the decisions. It will, from a model-based, be easier to update a quantitative, identify how are you going to use the results before you decide whether you shall have a qualitative or a quantitative approach. I think the methodology and is there. It's more how to implement it. Put that in focus, and you can get as much as possible out of the analysis.
And in your observations, the industry is adopting which type of methodology currently? Is it quantitative or is it qualitative or semi-qualitative? Which one is more popular and easier as well?
In that context, I can only talk for absolutely for Norway, which is the market I know the best, and I think it's dependent on degradation mechanisms and company strategies. But I will think that most companies have a quantitative approach where you have a rate-based structure. So on the probability part, it's typical a quantitative approach, and for the consequence part, it might end up with a more qualitative approach. So it's a mix. So call it semi-Q.
In that sense, now there is a range of RBI models available, and then quantitative, qualitative, and semi-qualitative, and hybrid approaches can be applied. The risk models themselves are concerned. Are they now reached their maturity levels, or there's room for improvement in all of them as far as the basic risk methods are concerned? For example, statistics and data and all that.
I think with all the new technologies coming in related to both AI and also sensors, that will enable the risk models to be more dynamic, getting live data, taking kind of historical information into account, using that much better. So that is the way the risk models can improve. I think the model itself, that's not where we will see the changes. It's the data gathering and use of the data where we will see changes in the future. And also that these typical risk models might be used in a digital twin setting. So, and that will also improve the visualization. It will improve the planning part. So those parts will I see that will improve. But for the model itself, I think we are where we should be.
If as a CUI expert, you're given that in an ideal world, what is the best thing to do for CUI in an ideal world? When everything is working perfectly as far as technologies are concerned, what is the wish of a CUI expert to have?
The wish, I would hope that a lot of companies could go together and gather data. Because we always say that, oh, it's difficult because we can never predict where we will have CUI. That's something I've heard a lot of times. But still, I'm saying that, okay, it is difficult, but we should use the information we already have. We know that this will happen where coating is weak. We know that coating is weak at certain point. We know CUI happen where water occur. Okay, where will that occur? Okay, that will be low points. So there is a lot of information we can use to get a better program. But if we can enter all information into a good database, put on artificial intelligence, smart algorithms, and I'm certain we can help all to make better decisions. But this will require a lot of information. It will not happen today. This is some information we can use in 5 or 10 years' time.
So there's a lot of room for improvement of when all the industries come together and share their data and knowledge base, from the field experience. That's where the major leap can happen with data analytics techniques and machine learning and AI. It can sift through that data.
That's one of the parts, and we also see that that they're coming more sensor technology with respect to water wetting, and also for the NDT methods. There are some promising technologies, and I'm sure we will get there to have a good, efficient NDT methods for CUI, but we are not there yet.
Sure, we are not there yet. So with that, Frode, thank you for your inputs in this session. In the next session, we are going to talk about the new guideline which you are making, RP 109, and what are the updates in that, and we're getting insights from that. So thank you for today.
Just a pleasure.